So if you live in a home that was built before 1962, you've probably run into quite a few of these. And these are ungrounded outlets. Now, as a realtor and a handyman, I get the question a lot, are those okay? Do I need to have them all changed out? Well, the reality is no, you don't. They're okay to have. The only real problem you're going to run into is, again, outside of the fact that they're not grounded, is that when you try to go plug in an appliance, it won't work. You just can't plug a three-prong grounded appliance into this. There's no option for it. So today we're going to go over 4 different solutions for this, and we'll also talk about why they're good and why they're bad. And at the end, I'll tell you which solution is the best. So our first solution here is the 3-prong adapter. I don't consider this to be a very good solution as it requires a certain set of circumstances to actually work properly. Most people will just come in, plug it in like that, and they think we're good to go. Yes, you can plug in a 3-prong here. The problem is, in the event of a ground fault, anything like that, you're going to be the ground and you could potentially get electrocuted. So not a great option here. Also, your equipment's going to get damaged. Not saying that doesn't change with the other solutions. But a lot of times, like I said, people will plug it in here, just into this bottom one, and they call it good. The problem is that's not the way it's supposed to be plugged in. So if you do use this, you want to plug this into the top here. And you see this little metal piece right here. This screw should actually be unscrewed and put through this, and that's going to give you a ground if you have a metal box or if the box is already grounded because you're going through that screw. I wouldn't rely on this as a reasonable option, but it is definitely out there. So again, though I don't consider it a good option, maybe a temporary short-term option, but I definitely wouldn't have it as a long-term option. Now, the next option is by far the best solution. It's the only one that actually fixes the grounding issue, and that is to simply rewire the house or rewire a section of the house. Unfortunately, this is usually by far the most expensive option. And even if you can do it yourself, it's usually very labor intensive. Now, it is possible to save a little bit of money by simply just rewiring a couple sections of the house. Maybe you rewire the kitchen or the laundry room or something, or maybe the bathroom. But you just rewire a couple spots. It's going to be a little bit less expensive, or at least it should be. Unfortunately, it still can be pretty expensive. And of course, then you're also dependent on how closed off your house is. So if maybe you have open ceilings in the basement or in the attic, things will get a little bit easier, but you're still bringing an electrician to come and do that. Now, I also know that a lot of times once you start on a project, especially in older homes, it expands. So it's very likely that once you start opening up old wiring, it's just the project's going to get bigger and bigger, and you may end up just rewiring the whole house. So unfortunately, that is not always the solution most people choose. But it is out there. It's by far your best option, and it's something you may want to consider down the road. Now, the next solution is going to be a GFCI breaker. This also can be kind of expensive. Usually these can range anywhere from 40 to 150 bucks, maybe more, depending on what you get and where you're at. You're also looking at the cost for an electrician to come in usually and install this. Now, if you're able to do it yourself, that's great. But if you're not, you're going to usually pay that cost as well. Now, this does not add a ground. This only adds extra protection. So in normal operation, you have current that goes in and out on the hot and the neutral. What this is going to do is anytime there's an interrupt or an alternate path for that current to go down there, it's going to trip this and immediately shut off that current. So for example, if you went up and you touched something and you became an alternate path, this thing's going to trip immediately. And it's going to notice up to 5 milliamps interrupt in milliseconds, and it's going to immediately shut that circuit off. So again, this does not provide a ground, but it provides a protection in the event that there is a ground fault or an interrupt in that current. Now, the other thing that's nice about this is, let's say you have a kitchen and you need most of those outlets to be GFCI protected. You can put this in your kitchen and it will protect all the outlets on that circuit. So you can technically have a grounded outlet. So for example, if your fridge needs a grounded outlet, and they all do, you can put a GFCI breaker in and you can actually have that grounded outlet in place. It just needs to be labeled that there's no utility ground, and it will meet code. So the nice part about this, again, is I can do a whole room or a whole circuit with just one. I just need to update my labeling. I don't need to necessarily go through and change out all my outlets. I can just change a few of them out, and they can actually be the grounded outlets, and it still meets code. Now for me, this is a good option for, say, a kitchen or somewhere where I want the whole room or the whole circuit to be GFCI protected. Not the cheapest option. Like I said, usually you're paying for the breaker and then you're paying to have it installed as well. Now, our last option is, of course, the GFCI outlet. And this is probably your best option outside of course, rewiring the whole house. Now, if you don't know how to install these, there's going to be a link at the end of the video as well as in the description. They're pretty easy to install. This works very similar to the GFCI breaker. The big difference here is this is for an individual receptacle and anything downstream versus the whole circuit. Now, when I say this only protects this outlet and the ones downstream, what I mean by that is that if I have power coming from the circuit that's plugged into my line side, and then on my load side, I'm going down to the next outlet in the path. That next outlet is going to be GFCI protected, and the one after that would be a GFCI protected, and so on and so forth. But anything that came from the circuit on the load side would not be protected. So it's only this outlet and anything downstream. Now, this is going to work very similar to our GFCI breaker. This thing is constantly monitoring current on the hot and the neutral, and if it sees an interrupt in that, so if there's an alternate path for that current to go down, it's going to immediately notice that and trip this breaker. Again, as low as 5 milliamps and milliseconds to actually trip this. So you're not going to just have current flowing, whereas like I said, you would with something like this. Now, the other thing that's nice is in bedrooms and in living rooms, things like this, where you don't need the whole room to be GFCI protected. You can actually put this in, you can plug in your appliances, maybe a computer, TV, and you're going to be fine. Now, it's not going to necessarily protect the appliance. You're still going to have that path deviation. You're still going to have that interrupt that could essentially burn out your computer or could burn out your TV. So it's always good to have a surge protector as well, in my opinion. So this is really more of a permanent solution unless you're going to have a whole house rewired. This is probably your best bet. The GFCI breaker is good too, but this is really good for quick, easy. It's usually a little bit less expensive, but just have this installed and you can go ahead and plug in those appliances. So the nice thing about these solutions is really you don't have to limit yourself to one. Maybe you want to do a GFCI breaker in a certain section of the house. Maybe you want to rewire the kitchen. Maybe you want to put some GFCIs in another section of the house. I mean, it just depends on the situation, but you can easily mix and match solutions. All right, guys, thanks for watching. If you're not already a subscriber, make sure you click that link below and hit that like button and help us out with the YouTube algorithm. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.